Hi there, it is Joe Omani, Professor of Consulting and consultant to the consulting industry here. I wanted to talk through the steps to sale. So how you actually go about selling your firm and what those steps are like. So I'm going to talk through a document that I give most of my clients, in fact, all of my clients, when we are preparing a firm for sale. This may or may not be interesting, but if you're thinking about selling your firm, you should firstly know how long it takes, and secondly, what a pain in the arse it can be. So the actual sales process itself can be quite quick. You can do it in 6 months if you want, but it can last up to a year. And if you add in the preparation that you need to do beforehand in order to dot the I's and cross the T's, it can take a lot longer, 18 months, 2 years. It's similar to selling a house. It's a metaphor some people don't like, but because the difference is that when you're selling a house, you don't destroy the house in the sales process, whereas there is a risk that you can destroy the value of the firm during its sales process. I'll talk more about that later. Okay, so what do we have here? So first of all, we have what do you have and what do you want? So this is really before the preparation period. It's really explicating what type of company you are, and from the buyer's perspective, why on earth they would buy you. And so I talk about, with my clients, I talk about a unique buyer's proposition. So how are you different from anyone else in the market, or most people in the market, at least those that are going up for sale? And why would they buy the firm rather than buying the individual? So what's the specific asset or offering? And this might be that you have great services that you can cross-sell. It might be that you fill a good gap that many firms have. It might be that you have some, great recurring revenue based on subscriptions. It may be that you are a great entry into a firm. So some firms sell services that are great door openers, and they allow a potential buyer, whether it's private equity who has a suite of firms or a strategic buyer, to sell services afterwards. So really understanding what you offer a potential buyer is really important. And part of the input into that will be some market research. Who's been sold? Who have they been sold to? Who are your competitors? How are you different to them? And hopefully you'll be doing this every year, but virtually no boutiques do. But it's something I very much encourage you. If you're thinking about a sale, get a really detailed view of the market. If you need help with that, I've got some great, reasonably priced students who do this year in, year out, and so would be very happy to do that for you. It takes a while, but it's not particularly complex stuff. And certainly during that workshop or workshops I sometimes run, you're also trying to get agreement from the founders in terms of the target price, target multiple, target earnout, and also the target buyer's profile. In that discussion, often disagreements, if they haven't emerged already, start to emerge between the founders. And it's really important to get consistency amongst the founders in terms of those details and what their own private needs are. Or personal needs are for the exit or the investment. And after you've and all of that can be modified as you go on, then after that you've got a long period of preparation. And this is really getting the data room or data vault ready. When I've got a huge spreadsheet of all the things that are typically in a data room, but the data room is the place that the buyers go to really understand the firm better. And it will have your financials, it will have your policies, it will have your articles of association, it will have your forecasts, it will have your pipelines, have your job descriptions, it will have your marketing strategy, details of your CRM, your PSA, your HCMS, and all the rest of it. So absolutely massive. So it's starting to say, well, first of all, do we have these things at all? Secondly, which of these are in a fit state to start uploading? Secondly, in terms of preparation, there's the project itself. So who's going to be the inner circle? Who's going to be told about it? Who's going to be doing what in terms of preparation? What happens if there's a leak? Are our legals intact and all the rest of it? So there's this big period of preparation. So you need to think of the sales process as another project or program with a series of sub-projects within it. Ideally, a founder will be in charge of the project, or one of the owners will be in charge of the project, but you want to be outsourcing the different projects to different people, ideally outside the company if you can, people like me, or your investment banker or your broker, because you don't want to be distracting the people in the firm away from their core job, which is around generating revenue. The worst thing you can do is start the sales process, and then 3/4 of the way through when you're negotiating, the buyer realizes that your pipeline has thinned slightly because you've taken your eye off the ball because you're spending too much time on this project rather than doing your day job. Then you recruit an intermediary. This is something that people like myself have been in the industry for a while, can provide recommendations on, good people, but you want to be looking for people that have experience with your type of firm, whose fees are reasonable, and there's huge variation in the fees, and also people that really get your firm and get you. I think it makes so much difference to the sales process, because you're going to be stuck in a room with these men or women for months, and you're going to be talking to them more than you talk to your family, probably for this period. And so it's really important that you get on. And so finding the right broker, I think, is one of the most crucial steps. And there's lots of varieties of broker. And I don't involve myself in the transaction at all. I'm just take people up to that point. But there's more informal people like myself, more laid back, relaxed, and informal. And then you've got sort of the Rothschilds, or the investment banks, who are rather expensive but also rather posh. And some organizations want that because they're going for the sort of very professional look, and they want to be able to say that our broker is this high profile big brand. You pay more for that, as you pay for big brands anywhere, but getting that feel is important. Preparing the company for the final year. As with selling a house, you do certain things before you sell a house that you wouldn't normally do if you were planning on living in the house for the next 10 years. So, it's the equivalent of that lick of paint, sealing over the cracks, fixing the cupboard door that has been hanging off for ages. In business terms, this is what type of pipeline do we want to have? Can we postpone some work? Considering the provisions, getting the forecast done. Is our pricing optimal? Do we need to buy in key members of the team to make sure that they don't go anywhere? And things like that. So it's all the preparation that you need to do for the final year. Once you're happy with that, you create the documents. And the two key documents are the executive summary, which isn't an executive summary of a report as you would know it. It's a sort of a very short document, which is really your shop window, why someone would buy you, what your unique buyer's proposition is, why you. And your confidential information memorandum, which is a much more detailed view of your finances, your staff, your history, your pipeline, and all the rest of it. So there's three levels of information, I guess. There's the executive summary, which is a brief summary. There's the CIM, which is longer. And then there's the data room, which is everything, or everything that you can get in there, at least. Then you get your broker or banker to search for potential buyers. I usually recommend, even if you're going for an industry buyer, this is something I should have talked about, industry buyers and private equity want slightly different things. If you think of a Venn diagram, there's a lot of overlap between what they're both looking for. They're both looking for great companies, but they're looking for slightly different things in terms of what you would emphasize in the executive summary or the confidential information memorandum. But when you are looking for a potential buyer, I would always include one of the other. So if you get if you get your strategic buyers, if you get a long list of those, get a few private equity in there as well, because it doesn't hurt to get a mix of views on it. And sometimes people get surprised. I've known people that thought they were going for a strategic buyer that ended up getting private equity investment, and vice versa. Then you get your initial approaches. You will have already had, if you're listening to this and you've got this far, thank you, you will have already had a lot of approaches. Now, I would ignore those, just bank the details and contact them when you need to. There's nothing wrong with spending 10 grand on getting a valuation if it's useful for you, but I would go through this process in your own time. Don't respond, you've got to remember that brokers and investment banks are marketing. agencies when they do the same marketing stuff that you do when you're trying to find clients. So in effect, once a firm in a certain sector hits a certain amount of revenue and a certain amount of EBITDA that's being reported on the tax return, it will trigger a marketing email that will go out. And hopefully, if they're good, they'll have modified that a little bit for your preferences. But don't think that because you're being approached for a conversation that there's anything special about you. I'm sure there is something special about you, but this is just marketing on their front. The sooner they can build a relationship with you, the more likely it is that you're going to use them as a broker, and it's another 2 to 5 million in their bank account. Thank you very much. So they will they'll manage the initial approaches. So they'll be having conversations with people that they know are looking for people. They'll manage the NDAs. They'll manage the response to questions. In fact, they'll be coming to you with a set of questions, and they will produce a short list of buyers or investors, whatever your preference is. Then the confidential information memorandum is sent out to that shortlist. They're given a lot more detail. And then typically you would go with a letter of intent with one buyer, and that buyer will come up with a ballpark valuation of the firm. Now that valuation, it's like valuing a house, yeah? So we've all had the situation where, the estate agent says, 3 million for the house. And then the buyer comes in, and you're getting serious with them, but then they start to negotiate because they found a bit of damp, because they've noted the cracks in the walls, because you haven't done such a good job on the outside of the house. So it's exactly the same with the company. They'll then do their due diligence, which means lifting the floorboards. The key thing here is there's no surprises. In the same way that if you're selling a house, you should be telling people, there's a bit of damp there, but we've had a report on it and X, Y, Z. We had an extension built, here's the certification, here's the guarantees and all the rest of it. So there should be no surprises. Hello, darling. This is my little boy, Alex, and he is, how old are you?
6.5.
He is 6.5, and if you give me 30 seconds, I'll be with you. And then they do their due diligence. During the due diligence, it's lots of work, and you can quite easily take your eye off the ball, so try not to do that. And then negotiations. There's lots of hints and tips I'll give you about negotiating with buyers in another session. Negotiations, offer, then fortunately or hopefully your share purchase agreement, and then you're done. All you've got to do then is your earn out, which hopefully, if your company is a great one and you've negotiated very well, will be 0.
Can I go on this?
You can go on this. Till next time.